A ship docks quietly at Santos port in Brazil. Containers marked India are loaded spices, medicines, auto parts, tech components, the pulse of the rising nation crossing the Atlantic. But here is the paradox. While goods flow, trust does not. India trades with the world yet remains a hesitant friend in Latin America. And now, India and Brazil, two democracies bound by the global South's heartbeat, sit at the same table talking about expanding the MERCOSUR Pact, a pact that could redraw not just trade routes but the moral geometry of the global economy. Can India and Brazil rewrite the geography of global trade? Picture this two nations standing oceans apart yet staring at the same question: how do you rise without following the West playbook? That is the quiet power beneath India and Brazil's new trade talks. On paper, they are negotiating tariffs and market access with MERCOSUR, the South American trade bloc of Brazil, Argentina, Uruguay, and Paraguay. But if you listen closely, this is not just economics. It is identity politics of the 21st century. It is about whether emerging democracies can shape global trade their way, fairer, plural, less colonial. MERCOSUR, for context, is Latin America's biggest trade pact, a common market formed in 1991 to unify southern economies. It's been criticized for being slow, bureaucratic, even self limiting. Yet its potential is massive 295 million people, a GDP of over $2.7 trillion, dollars, and abundant natural wealth, from lithium to beef to biofuel. India, meanwhile, is the fifth largest economy, hungry for energy, food security, and export diversification. So, when New Delhi reopens talks with MERCOSUR after years of lukewarm engagement, it's not a random diplomatic gesture. It is strategic repositioning. But let's slow down for a second. Why does this matter to you? An ordinary citizen in Hyderabad or Kolkata or Chennai or Bangalore? Because every liter of fuel, every smartphone battery, every pharma consignment you depend on is part of these invisible trade lines. And as the world fractures into rival blocs, US China tech wars, Russia Europe energy conflicts, India's ability to navigate new trade partnerships decides whether your prices rise or your economy thrives. Think of it like this: trade is not about ships and customs, it is about sovereignty. Who you trade with decides who you bow to. Now, India's outreach to Brazil through MERCOSUR signals something profound. A pivot from dependency to interdependence. It is India saying we will no longer choose between Washington and Beijing. We will build our own circle. And Brazil, under President Lula, is echoing the same spirit. A country tired of being treated as a raw material warehouse, now seeking tech, digital, and defense cooperation with Asian partners who treat it as an equal, not an extraction site. In this sense, India and Brazil are mirror democracies, both born from colonial exploitation, both wrestling with inequality, both too large to ignore and too independent to align blindly. But here comes the complexity. On paper, expanding MERCOSUR trade sounds win win. In practice, there are friction points. For India, MERCOSUR's common external tariff, a uniform import duty for all member nations, limits flexibility. Indian exporters, especially in pharma and engineering goods, want tariff reductions, while MERCOSUR farmers fear competition from India's agro products. Meanwhile, both sides must navigate protectionism, that quiet ghost haunting every free trade dream. And yet, the potential outweighs the pain. Brazil could become India's gateway to Latin America, a continent craving affordable medicines, green tech, and IT services. In return, India could gain access to biofuels, edible oils, and critical minerals essential for its clean energy ambitions. That is not just commerce, that is climate strategy. There is also symbolism here. The Global South Reclaiming Agency. Remember, trade rules have long been written by the North. The World Trade Organization, the International Monetary Fund, World Bank, all born in an era when developing meant dependent. But imagine a world where India and Brazil co draft a new code, one that values dignity as much as data, climate as much as capital. That's what is quietly at stake. Because if this partnership works, it could evolve into a South South corridor where developing nations don't just trade goods, but ideas of justice and sustainability. Think joint research on green hydrogen, joint voices at the United Nations for fair agricultural subsidies, joint leverage against digital monopolies. Of course, there is skepticism. Critics say the MERCOSUR moves slower than the Amazon's current, and India's bureaucracy often loses patience. But look deeper. This time, both nations are acting from necessity, not nostalgia. The West's economic fatigue, China's slowdown, and climate emergency have forced middle powers to find each other. It is not a revolution, it's realignment. Pause for a second. What are we really defending here? Not just trade access, it is strategic autonomy, the right to grow without asking permission, the right to build an economy that reflects your own ethics, not someone else's algorithms. And that changes everything. Still, for this vision to endure, both sides must confront hard truths. India must simplify tariffs and speed up logistics. Brazil must shed internal divisions within MERCOSUR. And both must invest not just in deals but in trust. Because alliances don't collapse from betrayal, they collapse from indifference. So perhaps the question is not whether India and Brazil can expand MERCOSUR. It is whether they can expand imagination to see trade not as transaction but transformation. When the next ship leaves Mumbai for Santos, it won't just carry goods, it will carry a message. The two democracies can trade not only in steel and spices but in solidarity. And maybe that is the quiet revolution we have all been waiting for.